Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of the Low Code Café, episode 36. My name is Bogdan Litescu. I'm the founder and CEO. And for those of you that are new to this event, know that it happens every week. And it's actually a community and a plant and app team event where we meet to discuss about community, to discuss about features, to discuss about use cases, customers. So it's very hands-on event. Our customers appreciate it as this is a good opportunity to learn new techniques, but also get involved, ask your questions. And also sometimes we do have guest speakers, also members from the community. So if you have any interesting use case or technique to share with the community, would love to have you present. This webinar is recorded and all past editions are available on our YouTube channel, and we'll post the link in the chat window in a bit. Usually we have the same agenda every week. We start with some high-level community updates, and I will share something with you today, followed by some product updates, support, interesting cases from the support channel. And then finally, we'll have the bigger chunk, which is doing something hands-on. And today we have a very, very cool topic. We'll be integrating with the integration platform with Zapier. Very cool topic. Cool. So just something that I wanted to share with you. I also shared it on my LinkedIn page because I found it very, very interesting. There is a new article that Gartner posted a couple of weeks ago, which is a roadmap of technologies for the future, right? And you see the yellow circle in the middle is the technologies that are possible today, that are mainstream today, right? So I was very glad to see that low code is placed as the thing you should be doing today, that organization should be doing today in terms of building software. But also the way I see low code, I see it as a gateway to all other technologies. Because as you adopt, let's say IoT, you still need a platform that consumes, that orchestrates, that collects data from the sensors. You need dashboards to make sense of that data. You need automation to trigger some workflows when some data falls between some values. So low code is here to stay as an orchestration for all these other technologies as well. And this really also helped me in some conversation with leads. Probably you hear this a lot too with organizations that always fall in this mindset that we need more people, we need more developers, right? So I was in a call with an organization that had 5 developers in their team, and they had such a big roadmap of things to do and always delays, always complexity. So then I was telling them about our low-code engineer team, that is 7 people in the team. And right now they are doing 8 medium complexity projects, right? They are doing 2 proof of concepts per week. They are also doing, getting involved in training, in account management, and that's 7 people. And, the customers, the leads are always impressed, like, wow, how can you get this productive? And I think that's what low-code is about, stepping out of this mindset that we need more people, getting into the mindset that we need better technology, and we need people that understand it, embrace it, and increase their productivity. So that's what I wanted to share with you. There's an article, and I will post the link in the chat, very interesting article that I recommend to you. So now I want to pass it on to Reza Garrow, our head of product, to give us some overview of what's coming, what's happening in the product.
Thanks, Bogdan. Hey, everyone. Just a quick update today, wanting to make sure I leave Dale plenty of time for this very cool demo and walkthrough today. So release 112, as we said, went out last week. It's been available. And today the notification will go out. So we've had several people adopt it, and no issues. A couple of very minor hot fixes have been released. They are pretty edge case related to certain ways that APIs maybe are being leveraged or consumed. Those changes are available in your updates section with release notes under the hot fixes. Release 113 is well underway. Right now, we are on track for an April 7th release candidate, early release candidate. So if someone's really itching to get their hands on it, and if I'm going to kind of take a walkthrough here of some items in the release, and if anyone has something here that they're just really itching for, that is maybe ready to go out, so like the items in purple, pretty much been tested and cleared, and if that's something that you're kind of wanting to raise your hand and get in on some early access or testing, hit me up and can make that available to you. Just going to touch on a couple of key highlights of what we've got coming and where we're working right now. Some improvements around user management and ensuring that if a user email or ID is already in the system, it won't let you, it now notifies you that, hey, that's already used, pick something else. Whereas before it was kind of failing kind of silently behind the scenes and not giving you good feedback. So not only does it not go ahead and try to do that, but it actually just gives you that feedback right there on the screen so you can correct and move forward. One of the big things that will be coming out in this release that we're haven't gotten into the development of yet, but the design and technical aspects have been, I think, sorted out. So we're pretty confident that this will be dropping, is the ability to have some grouping similar to the namespaces and tokens around workflows, and that will set the stage to have that then roll into entities and other areas in the system so you can start grouping things up, as we've talked about multiple times on these low-code cafes. Debugging and having greater audit and troubleshooting abilities inside of workflows. Wanted to mention that a really great idea and request came in on the community forum last week, community portal. And so went ahead and pulled that in as part of this work and took it up, which basically will be to expose the ID and name of the currently running workflow within itself, so that if you are trying to log an error, an issue, or something like that, you'll have a token that lets you say, hey, I was running inside of this particular workflow when I had an issue. So that, right now, if there was an error and it was logged, it will just say there was an error in a workflow, right? And so you'll be able to, not so much just even for errors, but your own audit and tracing type things, reference the workflow itself from within the actions in the workflow. And so another good thing that is coming and is ready, the dashboards. So the KPI tile dashboards, and we've done some demos and different things on these as that was in its minimal viable product stage. It's ready for prime time and is now accessible and built into the entity builder. So you can toggle on and off when you define an entity, or even after it's already defined, that, yeah, I want a KPI tile dashboard on the listing page that's generated by the system. There were some enhancements that went out last release, 112, that if you haven't configured a tile, it just won't show. So it won't show as unconfigured to regular users. Developer type roles will still see it and can configure it. So it's very safe to turn this on and have it injected into your page for you. And you can configure the tiles kind of at your leisure and expose them at your leisure. And so you don't need to create alternate templates. Out of the box, it's got a default template that has 4 across, but if you only wanted 3 or 2, then just configure 2 tiles. The other ones won't show up automatically. And so some of the things we have are in the process of working right now. A new ability to run SQL statements for developer roles from within App Builder, similar to the SQL runner that is in the persona bar. So no need to go to persona bar or be at that level of privilege. You can query up and see what's in your entities, in your tables, in the database very easily now from within App Builder. Also, a super handy one, kind of complements very nicely that token I was talking about in workflows, where you'll know the workflow itself. There's currently a log error action, and it does exactly that, logs the system error into the admin logs, the event logs. now you'll be able to log an event, and there's a drop down with several types of events. So if anytime like a SQL query was executed or run, you can specifically log that type of event and say, here's the SQL that was run and who ran it, right? And the SQL runner will make use of that. But all sorts of just general and different types, and you can decorate and control a lot of what are in these events. So I think this is huge, and combining an action like this with workflows can let you start really doing powerful logging, auditing, tracing, and debugging inside of your applications. Also coming soon is a ability to override the page builder CSS, and it will be decorated and commented nicely with things like if you wanted to change the font for your app, sizes of the fonts in the menu, things like that. All the sections will be kind of pre-set up and called out, and you can come and modify and tweak that CSS there. Some important security stuff coming, and kind of a big one I think everyone's been waiting on, and this will be the last maybe one or two I mentioned here, is that the ability to give read access to unauthenticated users. Currently in the entity builder, and to make use of the binding a listing, a grid, to an entity, it needs to be a user that is logged in one of the defined roles that have been given permission, as well as the read action, things like that, won't work for non-logged in authenticated users. So we're changing that, and there will be a all users type role listed there, and you can give, if you at the entity level give read access there, you'll be able to then expose things that are not so sensitive and where appropriate at your discretion. And last thing is just that in 112 we certified DNN 981, and in 113 we're certifying 990, and so everything is being developed and tested against 990, as well as some backward compatible testing as well, but heavy focus on making sure that we support the latest and greatest DNN. And I think that is a good version, and there's a lot of neat things and stuff they've cleaned up in 9.9. So we want to make sure that we hit the ground running with that. And so as I mentioned, coming April 7th as a release candidate, April 14th, it should hit the world, and we're tracking well for that. That's it for me this week.
Great. Always good stuff. Let me share my screen. So today, let's see, from this Trenches segment, I have a couple things to talk about, and then I'm also the presenter today, so we'll just roll right on into that. And let's get to the right screen. From the Trenches. Okay, so I want to call your attention before I get started to the links on the chat window. There's several opportunities, all the things we've been talking about that we will talk about today. But the first one on the chat window is a chance if you want to get in on the action today. I am going to be importing from an email into a Plant an App application. And so there's instructions there. If you send me an email, don't hit send yet, wait till I say so, but you're welcome to compose one. It just has to be to me and with the words new feedback, and that'll find its way into this webinar. Other things that are on the chat window is our link to the low-code Café feedback. This is the same form you have the app. When the webinar closes, it's going to give you an opportunity to give us feedback on what we've done, but there's also a short URL for giving us feedback if you want to use that one. A reminder, subscribe to our YouTube channel to see this and other videos that we publish. And a reminder to, if you're not using the community portal, get signed up over there as well. So all that's on the, that plus what Bogdan has presented on Gartner, all that's over on the chat window. One of the topics that we dealt with this week, and I learned something new. I always learn something new about our product, but there's a thing called JWT security, and if you want to interact with particularly our APIs, that you need to understand how to do JWT security. And I put together a low-code feature focus. It's 8 minutes long, explains the whole process, has an API endpoint and a token that you can just directly import and just quickly and easily get into JWT security access. I'll explain a little bit more about that because we're going to be doing an API endpoint during this segment today. So I'm going to roll right into hands-on low coding. And the topic is Zapier. So if you're not familiar, Zapier is a tool that lets you integrate with, well, lots of other apps and services. And so you can connect 2 or more apps and automate repetitive tasks. You can do it without coding or relying on developers. So the goal today is to show off Plant an App. How far can we get in 45 minutes? How far can we, what kind of things can we implement, and kind of do a little idea brainstorming review at the end, taking a look at the services that Zapier offers. So again, here's the instructions on where to send an email and a subject. Again, don't hit send yet. And so here we go. Here's our first task. I'm going to start with a basically empty Plant an App setup, and we will be looking for emails coming in from you and from me, and we're going to use Zapier to dump them into Plant an App. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to be able to set up an environment that is going to receive these things, receive the emails, and so that'll be a simple entity. The only setup that I've done in the environment is I've set up a user that has a manager role, and we're going to use that user as we work through some of the tasks. But other than that, it's an empty Plant an App. So we're going to create a feedback entity. This is an opportunity for you to give us feedback. This is just for this webinar. It's not an ongoing thing. But when you send us an email, it's going to have, the database is going to have fields like title, description, who it's from, and the status. And we're going to handle security in the right way and build a Zapier to get that to happen. So I'm just going to dive right in. I am in the configuration section of our app, and I have this Zapier at plantanapp.com user set up, and that's the only setup that I've done. If we look at entities, we don't have any entities yet, and we're going to start with one now. So the first entity is, the name of it is a feedback, and we'll call it feedback entries as it's plural. And for properties, I'm going to drop in the 4 that I talked about: title, description, from, that's going to be the from email address, and status. And we'll provide some types here. So description is going to be a large text, from is going to be an email address, and I'm going to let status be a text this time. Our display name is title, and we could we'll let everything be searchable and filterable here, and sortable. Why not? So we have our basic setup, and so we say save. Plant an App creates the feedback entries table for us, and the entry form and the listing form. So we could enter one here, and I'm going to do that now. We'll do a new one and call it test A, description B, and I'm not going to provide a status. And so we can see that we have a basic database, an entity table, and a listing. One of the things that I'm going to do is just to automatically provide a value for status as it comes in. And so the way I'm going to do that is through a workflow. We like to use workflows. Here's our first workflow, and this is going to be the initialize feedback workflow. And so anytime we have a new feedback item, this is the initialization that we want to do. I'm going to do a simple initialization here, and then hopefully we'll have time to come back and enhance this a little bit. So we look at our feedback actions, and we are going to partially update a feedback. And the feedback that we're going to do, I'm getting a little out of order here, but we're going to update the feedback using the ID that's provided to us as we come in. And I'm just going to initialize the status to a value of new. So here's the step that I skipped. We're going to have a feedback item as an input, and that is going to be an entity of the type feedback. So this will give us all the feedback fields that were created. We're going to do a process that's the partially update the feedback to give us the status is going to get initialized, and then we'll end. And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to have any outputs on this one. So we'll just save this and close. And because I want that to happen every time, I'm going to drop in a quick automation. And the new job is going to be always initialize feedback. This is going to be in our context, the portal is going to be that. And I'm going to, just as a shortcut, use this user as the security so that it will have the ability to write to feedback. And the trigger for this is going to be a database where anytime that something gets inserted into app feedback, this is going to trigger. And the only action it's going to do is to execute our initialize new feedback workflow. So very simply, when a record gets inserted, we're going to execute the workflow. We're not going to do anything else here. And we do have to pass it the ID of what is of the item that got inserted so that it knows which one to initialize. So that's a quick step there. So we've got our feedback initialized every time. Let's make sure that that works so far. I'm going to delete out my test record and do a new one, A, B. I'm not going to provide a status, and then I'm going to refresh, and if it's worked, we get a status. Yeah, so the app automation worked and the workflow worked. We now have a new status. So now whether we enter it from here or from the API, it's going an API endpoint, which we're going to build next. It's going to initialize the status and work through that workflow. So let's look at the workflow, and I'm going to circle back to what I was talking about in JWT from the trenches segment. When we create an entity, it automatically creates some API endpoints so that we can interact with this data. We can do creating new records, getting a record, updating a record, deleting a record, and then getting all the feedback entries through this get. So it creates all these for us. And if we were to edit one, you typically don't want to change these, but if we were to edit it, we can see that it is, accepts the input parameters of the various column names. It creates a new feedback using the action that's created. And then it reads the feedback and presents it back as a JSON object. But what I want to call your attention to here is that the security is set up to JWT access. This means that when the call happens, the caller must provide a authorization token that relates to one of these 4 checked roles: citizen developer, manager, admins, low-code engineers. That all these, if they belong to these roles, they have access to this item. Now, this type of security is a little bit difficult to implement with Zapier and the way that I'm going to do it. So to avoid that, I am going to make a copy of this endpoint, because what I want to do is to be able to create a new record of type feedback. I'm going to make a copy of this, and let's see if it's going to let me clone it. Yep, this is going to, I'm going to call it the Zapier feedback create. Doesn't matter what we call it, but we'll have to use that in a minute when we talk to Zapier. And it's going to be pretty much the same. I'm going to make two small changes. One is I'm going to remove the JWT access and restrict it to a particular key. And there's going to be a key that is established for Zapier to use. So this is still a secure option. By using this key, Zapier will be able to create this, but anybody else without the key wouldn't be able to use this endpoint. The other small change that I'm going to do is I need to load a user. This, because I'm doing it this way, it doesn't have any context. And again, I'm going to give it the Zapier user so that it will act as if it's the Zapier user as it's creating the new feedback and have the permissions to do so. So same action type, and so we'll save and test. When you save and test, it asks for some values. So I'm going to say the title is API, ABC. Again, not going to give it a status, execute it, and we get a response back that is the record that was created. If we go back and look at the records, we can now see the same thing, API, ABC, and again, it got the new status. So our automation is working. Okay, so we've built everything that, at least to start with, everything that we need to do a Zapier. We have an endpoint that, that we can use, and this is the endpoint here. I'm going to copy that link. And so now we're going to go ahead and set up Zapier to work. Oh, so into Zapier. In the, I'm going to create a folder for today in Zapier and call it LCC 36. And all of my zaps are going to go into that spot. I'm going to make a new zap, and going back to what we're trying to accomplish, we're going to go from a new feedback email and drop it into Plant an App. So the first thing then we're going to want to do is use Gmail as the type. And the triggering event is that we're going to receive a new email matching search. And we'll continue. Zapier walks you through everything that you need to do to be able to retrieve, interact with the service that you selected. So we have a trigger, and the account I've already set up. It would walk you through connecting your account, but mine is already connected, so I'm going to select it. And then we'll set up the trigger. And the search string we want to do is we want to look for the subject. And this is the same structure that you would use if you were searching within Gmail. We want to look for a subject that contains the words new feedback. And so we will continue from there. And we're going to test our trigger now. It wants to do so. So I'm going to build a quick email to myself. We'll compose it and say, to me, subject. Nothing too complex, and I'm going to send that, and it's going to, we now have an email that we can test with. So when we test the trigger, it goes out and does the thing. It goes looking for this new email and sees if it can find one. And when it finds one, it shows you everything that it has from that email. So for example, it has labels and threads and message of the subject, who it's from. All these parts and pieces of the email are available to pick off automatically. So the trigger worked, and so now we're into the action. What do we want to do? Well, we want to do a webhook. The webhook action lets us say that we want to post, send something to another API, and this is where we're going to send it to our endpoint. So the URL that we're going to do is the one that I've held on my clipboard here. The Zapier feedback create is where we're going to send it to. And we need one more thing, and that is this security code. So when I look at our security settings for Zapier, we have a security code here, and I'm going to provide that as part of the URL. So that goes in as an API key equals that. And that's going to get our information posted to our Plant an app. The payload type is going to be a form. Actually, the payload type is going to be JSON. We want to send JSON, and we're going to send our fields. We're going to send a title. This is going to be the subject. See, Zapier presents the things that are easily available, so you can just click and go. So we're going to send the subject. We're going to have a description. These are the input parameters to our API endpoint, and we'll send the plain text to it. And then we will also send the from, and that is going to be, we can search for it here. Oop, not there. We can say, pick the from name. I want the from email address, and it'll put that into the API. It gives us some other options which we don't need to use, and we're not using authentication. We don't need to add any headers, so we're really good to go. We say continue, and the first thing it wants to do is to test, and it's going to send this key. Tells you where it's going to send it, what it's going to send, and so we will test it and see if it works. Okay, I have a setup error in my endpoint, so we will change this to be a public. So that's this one, and in our security, we're going to say it's public. I neglected to do that earlier, but again, still secure because we're using the key, API key. So we will review, test again. And now it says it's successful. And if it's worked correctly, this email is now, we have our new feedback test. Okay, so last step, I am going to turn on this Zap. And now any of you that wanted to participate, now is the time to hit send on that email. I am going to give it, go to my Zaps here and give it a name. I'd like to make it be meaningful. So we will rename this to be feedback email to feedback entity. Just tells us what it's doing. Okay, so that this Zapier on my account level, I'm using the free account, by the way. This runs every 15 minutes or so. So if there's any emails to be processed and you want to push them along faster, we can run the Zap. Otherwise, it'll just run periodically, grabbing those. And it's looking for new items, and it doesn't look like it's found any, but it's going to be, oh, it did. We've got 3 new items. So all of our emails are going to come in here. And so if we look back on our feedback entries, we have some tests. All right, thank you for participating, Jeff and Mark and Maya. So now we have all this. We've accomplished step 1. We have new feedback emails from Zapier into Plant an App, and we kept it secure, and we did all that in 20 minutes. So that's not too bad. So since we still have some plenty of time left, let's do a couple more. The next thing, let's say that every time a Zapier, a new feedback email comes in, we want to notify Microsoft Teams. we have a team defined, and we want to bring that in. So we'll go ahead and start this Zap, and this is going to be then started by, the trigger is a webhook. And again, there's lots of different things that we can hook to, but a webhook is certainly very convenient. And we want to catch a hook from somewhere. And so we will continue. And it gives us the URL that we're going to need to do. So this is, I'm going to stop my creation here and copy that to the clipboard and go back to the configuration section and build what we need to build in order to catch this to send the webhook to Zapier. So I'm going to return back to the initialize new feedback workflow. Remember, this one we were only partially updating the feedback. We were setting the status, but now I'm going to add another option, another action, and it's going to be a server request. So we'll do a server request, and we're going to send it. This is going to be, give it a little documentation. So we're going to say webhook that they gave to us, and then for data that we want to send along, we're going to send title equals feedback title, and we'll do, this is going to be, we also want to send the description. Anything that we want to be able to see and send to teams, we're going to need to be able to send it here. I'm going to do the from, and I also want to send the ID. And so, and let's see, we might as well send the status as well. So again, all these are coming from the input to this workflow. So it's not magic, it just, all the fields are there and we're sending them as part of the webhook. All right, so this is going to be a post to the Zapier webhook, and we're sending all this data, and we're not going to retrieve any information, we're not going to do anything else, we're just going to save it. Now, I am going to use the new save and test feature where we can give it a, we'll do number 6 here, ID number 6. So we just say save and test, and we give it number 6 and run it. And so now there's something that's been sent to Zapier. So when we continue and test our trigger, it's saying, if it sent something to this, hopefully it caught it. Yeah, it found it. So the data has arrived at Zapier, and so the input trigger is all working. So we will continue, and now we want to send this to Microsoft Teams. And so we will say Teams, Microsoft Teams as where we're going to send it. And we want to send a channel message. It makes us have an account, and I already have an account set up, so I can just pick it. Otherwise, it would walk you through the dialogue to do that. We're going to do some actions. The team that we want to send this to, it lists my teams, and I have this Zapier test team that's established, and I have a channel that's established on that team called General, and I'm going to send the message in Markdown. So here's the spot where we say what we want it to show in Teams, and so we'll say new feedback from, and we will pick the name. It's from, it's got placeholders here, but it'll be the actual one from the feedback when it goes. And we can say that the title is this, and we can put some extra entries in here, and then description, and put description in there. And then there's a couple of extra things I want to do here. When we look at, I want to be able to provide a link in my team so somebody can click on that and go right to it. So I'm going to click and go right to this, and it's going to give me the URL structure that we need, which is here's the URL plus the ID. So I'm just going to copy that whole thing and go back to Zapier and post that URL in here. And instead of saying 6, I'm going to say that I want the ID. So it'll be a dynamic one. And then I also want to change, instead of just throwing the URL out there, since I'm using Markdown, I can use, I open this feedback here and provide this in parentheses. This is the Markdown syntax to be able to do that. And so that'll render as a link without showing the whole thing. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flag myself. This is syntax that Teams allows so that it's going to flag me, and so that'll just make it bing real quickly when it happens. And so we will continue. And so now, as always, it wants to test. So here's what it's got set up. Sorry, let's scroll this around here. It's got set up, it's going to a particular team, what the format is. Here's all the stuff it's going to send. And so I am going to test this and review it. And if this works, we get a message from Zapier that something has happened. So I'm going to drag Teams onto the canvas here so that we can see what it's done. So in general, we have this new, we've got now a new feedback from Zapier. It's the new feedback from Maya. It's 2 of 2, and when the light turns green, and the whole content. And so notice at the bottom here, we could format this better, but it has my name. That's the @ that I did, but here's the link. And if we click this, it'll take us right to the item. So cool with that. So now we've done 2 things, feedback emails and Microsoft Teams. Still have time for more, so we'll keep going. Let's say that our objective is to publish these internally for feedback. So we want to send the feedback item that we got. We're going to send it to Google Drive and put it in a shared folder. And so we want to be able to see that within Google Drive. So I have a folder that I've already created in Google Drive that's public shared for comment, and it has a particular folder ID. We'll use that in just a second. So let's see, I'm sorry, I need to turn on this app and I forgot to name it. So let's get the paperwork done here. This is feedback to Teams. So we have 2 Zaps, and they're both turned on. So the next one we want to do is, again, we'll do a webhook, because I'm going to put a button on my form to say publish to Zapier. We're going to catch a webhook again, and this is the hook that we're going to catch. And so I'm going to copy that and go back and do that little bit of development. So when we look at feedback entries, this time I'm going to do it as a button. And so I'm just going to add a button over here to say publish. And so we'll go into the listing, add an item button that says publish. And it's going to be available to anyone. And the action that we're going to do is a server request, because we were going to throw a webhook. So it's going to go here. It will be a post, and It's actually the same information that we have in our workflow. So I'm not that one. I'm just going to copy that out to save a little time. So we're going to post the same fields off into Webhook. And that's it. We can save that. And so now if we refresh, we should have a publish button. And I'm going to go ahead and click the publish button so that Zapier has something to look at when we move to the next step. So we have we're continuing with our webhook. We're saying continue to set up our trigger. We've sent a request to it, so we just test it, and it says it picks it up, and we see all the fields there. I don't know why there's no data, but hopefully this is going to work. So we'll continue on. We've caught the hook, and now we're going to do Google Docs. We want to publish this to Google Docs, so we will say create a new document from text. We're going to choose my Google account that's already connected. The document name is going to be called feedback, and I'm going to say the ID from and whoever it's from. That'll be its document name, and then and so we will put the description here, and so it will be created with the description. We'll also include the title. So it's going to create it with this information, and instead of creating it, again, I have a spot where I want to put it, this folder ID, so we're going to grab that, and the folder that we're going to put this in, I'm just going to paste that in there and continue. So it wants to test this out, so we will continue and we'll get the test and review. So we'll click it and see what happens. When we look in this folder now, we have feedback from, and it didn't show any information. Maybe the one I clicked. We'll test it with another one here in a minute, but it did create a folder, a file in the folder. I'm going to remove that one. We'll do one that's more exciting here. Hopefully it'll work better. So we'll finish this up. We'll turn on our Zap and give it a name, which is Google Docs, and so now it's active, and so let's try it out. We'll go back to our item here, and we will. Oh, I know the problem. In my form, I didn't send an ID. That was maybe I did. Let's see. So we're doing a server request, and all these are, they're not feedbacks, because in this context, all we need is the field name. So this is the part where if Radu were on, he would have caught me, he would stop me. Okay, so we'll try this again. We'll refresh, and now we'll send this test and publish it. And now look in our shared folders, and feedback 5 from Mark is created, and the document has the content. So I'm going to look and see if there's any questions. There was one. If there's any others, please jump in. I did get a question. What version of Zapier you have to support webhooks? That's a great question. The webhooks are what they call a premium, and so that means you just have to be on a paid plan. So I'm on a free plan that I have 8 days to go, so I'm still using taking advantage of their largesse. But if you're on a free plan and they start at, I think, $20 a month, you have access to Webhook. Okay. So one final one, so we have time, I'm going to keep going. So the one final one is, what if you wanted it to dial the phone? DialMyCalls is a service that Zapier integrates with, and it does outbound calling and texting. There's other ways to do this. There's other services as well. But this is a cool one because I'm in the process of doing a proof of concept on a support desk system. And if you offer 24/7 support, sometimes you need to get somebody's attention in the middle of the night. So maybe a phone call is appropriate. And so DialMyCalls will send a pre-recorded broadcast message. There's other messages that you can send as well. So I am going to do the same kind of thing. There's one more hook here. So we'll create a zap. It's still going to be a webhook. Notice that every time we create a webhook, see it says premium. That's how you know that you have to be on a paid plan to use this thing. We're still going to catch the hook, and notice every time you do one, it gives a different URL automatically. So in the same way we've been doing before, I've copied that, and I am going to do it as a button as well, just for quick and easy. And so we're going to have it's going to be the same kind of server request here. So I'm going to copy that. So to speed things along, we'll add an item button that is called broadcast. And I'm going to want confirmation of this because I don't want to send out the confirmations. I don't want to broadcast unless I'm sure. And we'll import the action from before. And we just need to update that with the correct URL. So we'll go back here and grab this URL again and paste it in here. So this is now pointing to the broadcast, the correct Zapier. We're sending all the same kinds of information. Really, in this case, we don't need to send this information, but it doesn't hurt anything. We're not going to use it. So we have that, and we refresh the screen. So we now have a broadcast button. And so we will send that. We will say broadcast. Yes, that's what we want to do. So this webhook is going to go out. As always, Zapier makes us test it. We did a test. We got the fields that we just sent. So our hook is fine. And so now we're going to say DialMyCalls. And we are going to send a phone call. It asks for the account, which is already connected. Set up the action. This is a name. This is a test broadcast. This is just the way it's going to show up in the accounting over at DialMyCalls, so we know what happened. So the caller ID that it's going to come out from, these are already pre-registered with DialMyCalls, so I'm going to pick one. The recording, I've already pre-recorded a message. So this is going to be the new feedback alert, and I'm going to just send it to me. You could have a big long list of people, but I'm just going to send it to me. And so I am going to skip the test on this one. And I do that only because I just want to prove that the button works, right? So I'm going to turn it on and name my Zap. This is broadcast. So broadcast shows up in the list. It's turned on. So let's try it on a button. We're just going to say, we're going to pick one here and say broadcast. And yes, that's what I want to do. And if anything is working right here, my phone's going to ring. And while we wait for that, I'm going to take a look at DialMyCalls and log in here. And so we can see we have this test broadcast that's in progress, and my phone is ringing, and I'm going to answer it.
Demonstration of a DialMyCalls broadcast alert. You have new feedback. This is a DialMyCalls alert.
so in this 45 minutes that we've had, we have connected PlantinApp to inbound emails, and we've notified Teams, we've talked to Google Drive or Google Docs, and we have done a DialMyCalls broadcast. So the PlantinApp engine is just very suited to do this kind of integration and do things in a hurry. And then I just wanted to kind of end on some ideas that and some other things, and so kind of tell you where you can go next. There is a Zapier has the ability to start and stop Amazon instances. So you could have a push button that activated a website, for example, spun up a website. You can monitor Twitter for mentions, so you can look and see when your company is mentioned and do something in reaction, poke that right back into your PlantinApp app. You can respond to Facebook leads. We just did a broadcast message. You can people use this to broadcast to many people at one time. Those cost about 7 cents a call. If you're on a paid plan, again, I'm on the free plan, but they give you 25 calls to play with if you wanted to check that one out. And Amazon SNS, so, Simple Notification Service, has the ability to free and easy, or almost free, send texts and emails. So if you wanted to email your team in one bulk subscription way, you can use SNS to do that. And you can even activate it by saying, Alexa, hey, do this. All the apps are listed in, all the apps that are activated for Zapier, you can do that at zapier.com/apps. If there are any other questions, I would be happy to answer. And beyond that, I'll quit sharing here and bring Bogdan back into the.
Actually, I have a question, Dale, which I'm sure that that maybe you'd hear that question a lot. When would you choose to choose Zapier, and when would you choose to use PlantinApp? Because basically, you could do this kind of integrations purely with PlantinApp.
Absolutely. So, and that's a great question. We, for example, several episodes back, we integrated with HubSpot and did a great integration with HubSpot that worked very well within PlantinApp. Zapier does HubSpot as well. So there's a limited number of things that you can do with that. What I've tried to demonstrate today is no code, low code, right? Without knowing much of anything except that I want to do it and that I have these services. Somebody without a deep technical background can go ahead and create these. You're limited in Zapier in terms of what you can do. It's whatever has been pre-published, unless you want to dive deep. It's whatever has been pre-published in Zapier. So while you may be able to create a contact, for example, in HubSpot, maybe there's something else that you want to do that you can't do. Well, we can dig deeper within, you can get a developer involved or dig deeper into the technical part and do the same thing. Another great example of that is that we have a tool within Sharp Scheduler or an action that will allow you to read emails. So we could do the same email thing that we did today. We could do that within PlantinApp, but as a low-tech, low-code guy, and if I'm willing to pay for it instead of now, of course, it wants to update. Sorry about that. You know, that would be the time you can just quickly fire for effect, use Zapier to get that done, and not or dig deeper and use a developer. So that's
cool. I think that's a very, very good overview. So if it's something that can be done easy and fast, Zapier is much faster and easier to do compared to PlantinApp, which is more powerful as you need to go in depth and control multiple aspects of the integration. Cool. So I think if there are no other questions, thanks all of you for being here again today. We covered a great subject, which is the Zapier integration. It came up a lot of times in the past, and You can see that it was so easy. I bet Dale set his expectation only to touch the first point, but in 45 minutes, he managed to do the entire demo. So it's very impressive. Thank you again all for being here. Please make sure to give us feedback. The feedback really helps us to improve ourselves, improve this event. Now you have an email address that you can send to Dale, and they will get picked up automatically and get to our Teams account with the technique that you've seen today. So looking forward to having your feedback, and see you again next week.